So yesterday I previewed the 6 Eastern Conference game that's going to be happening on Decision Day. Today, it's time to preview the Western Conference game that's going to be happening on Decision Day. And there's no doubt that the Western Conference, there is still a lot more that is up for grabs in the Western Conference heading into Decision Day as it is in the Eastern Conference. We still have 2 more spots that is up for grabs in terms of playoffs, and we also have teams that is trying to battle for home field advantage in the playoffs. But we start with the game that is probably the biggest game of Decision Day and is the game that many people are talking about, and a game that I am actually going to be going to a view party down at Avaya Stadium and watch this, and also do a match vlog of this, is the Timbers versus the San Jose Earthquakes. There's no doubt that this is the biggest game of Decision Day because this is simply win and you're in. If either of these teams are able to win in this game, then they are, of course, going to be bound for the postseason. Now, that is the simple scenario in terms of both teams of how to clinch the playoffs. There's even a little bit more complicated scenario of what happened if this game ends in a draw and what happened if a team loses in this game. Well, if a team loses in this game, I'm assuming most likely they are going to be out for the playoffs, and especially for the Quakes. I know for a fact that if they lose this game against Portland, then they are officially out of the playoffs. But if this game ends in a draw, well, for Portland, you know, they can, of course, clinch the playoffs if they drew this game, or if Dallas lose or tie against SKC. So in some way, you know, that whole win or in kind of mentality that both teams needs to come in. Portland technically doesn't have to have that mentality. You know, if they do get a draw out of this game, they will still clinch the playoffs. And that, you know, if Dallas lose or tie against SKC and they drew their game, then yes, they'll still be able to make it to the playoffs. For the Quakes, if they do drew this game, they will have to hope that Dallas and Colorado would lose their game, and that they, of course, will clinch the last spot in the Western Conference. But obviously, as a Quakes fan, I'm not even thinking about what happened if we drew this game or lose this one. All I'm thinking is we got to win this game. And it's not going to be easy because unlike a couple of years ago, we were in this scenario where we kind of control our own destiny with the fact that if we win our game, then we're in the playoffs. Unlike in 2017 when we played against Minnesota, that game was at home. This is on the road, and let me tell you, on the road on Decision Day, and that you have to win a game on the road to go to the playoffs, that is a complete different animal than what you will have to do when you have to win at home so that you can move on to the playoffs. In fact, going on the road is even much tougher, and that, once again, there's going to be some things that's going to be against the Quakes in this game, not just because of the fact they have to go on the road and have to win on the road for what would only be the 4th time this season, but they also have to beat the odds in terms of historical standpoint between this fixture and the fact that the Quakes have never won against the Portland Timbers at Providence Park. So if they, of course, are going to make the playoffs, they got to make some history in this game and become the first Quakes team to go to Portland to able to beat the Timbers in a league game. I know I heard they have won against the Timbers at Providence Park in some of the U.S. Open Cup and also the preseason, but I'm talking about the league right here. And the other thing that I think you could also say that is going to be against the Quakes in this game is going to be referee, and probably we're not going to have Tommy Thompson in this game, so we're going to be missing one of our fullback. I'm assuming most likely Salinas will take his spot. I mean, I know some people will say, well, how about Lopez will just slots in that spot? No, I don't want Lopez to be in that game, and in a game where it's basically do or die for the Quakes. And it's nothing against Lopez, but he just have not been a very reliable fullbacks for us, and I definitely have more faith if Salinas is in there starting than what Lopez would be in for the Quakes. Now, for the Timbers, obviously there are still things that's going to be against them in this game too, and one of the things that's going to go against them is that they won't have Brian Fernandez in this game, who was suspended after he he got sent off in the last game. They tried to appeal it, but unfortunately that appeal wasn't successful. And I guess you could maybe say that it's kind of the good news that Fernandes is not in this starting 11, because he hasn't really been doing well for the Timbers and hasn't really scored like almost every single game as when he got to the Timbers a couple of months ago. And it's been Abobasi, the one that has been more affected than what Brian Fernandes is in terms of the goal scoring department. But still, they still miss their most important goal scored in this game, and that the form has been something that you can also say that is going to be against them, which is kind of crazy to say that home form is something that is against the Timbers, consider they are so good at home this season. Or, well, not so good at home this season, but so good at home in the prior or in the previous season. But this season, for whatever reason, they just cannot not win at home. And at least for the last couple of games, where I think they have now gone 4 games without a win at home, and that's including a stretch where they lost 3 straight at home and they weren't able to get a goal in those 3 home games. So yeah, this is going to be very fascinating. Obviously, I think, you know, the pressure is definitely on both teams in this game. Obviously, I think whoever loses is going to have a lot of talks about the fact that they simply just choke at the end of the season. I mean, for the Quakes, they would lose 6 in a row if they lose this game, and that they simply choke from a position where it looked like for sure that they were going to make the playoffs, and then they lost 6 in a row and ultimately missed the playoffs. And for Portland, you know, if they lose their game, and that they were heading into this 12-game home stretch in a very good position, and that if they lose this game and go like 6 or I think 6 games without a win to end the season, then you can also say that they also choked too, because they were supposed to win these home games and they didn't do that. So yeah, the pressure is definitely for both teams, and I'm pretty sure for the neutral, you're definitely going to be happy watching this game and see how the outcome is. But for a person that is supporting one of these teams, oh yeah, I am absolutely nervous about this. Like, this is going to be a very nerve-wracking game, and that at the end of this game, somebody is going to have to suffer heartbreaks of their season, coming just short of making the playoffs. And I hope that as a Quakes fan, I know I suffer a lot of heartbreaks, but hopefully this is not going to be another scenario where we're going to once again suffer a heartbreaking way to end the season, and that we are not going to make the playoffs. And to be fair, if they do suffer a heartbreak, it's pretty typical, because this team seems like they broke my heart every single week with the way that they came so close of getting crucial resort, and that they, of course, aren't able to do that. And that we can also even get a discussion of all those heartbreaking losses during this losing streak, and how if we did not have those heartbreaking losses, and if we didn't at least pick up 1 or 2 points that to avoid those heartbreak, then maybe they would not be in this scenario heading into decision day. But moving on into the next match is Dallas and SKC. So for Dallas, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people say that they were going to be the odd man out in terms of the battle for those 6 and 7 position. But right now, it seemed like they're not really the odd man out, and that they might be in the best position in terms of making the playoffs out of the 4 teams that's battling for the last 2 spot. Dallas, of course, they can clinch if they, of course, can win against SKC. And keep in mind, this is an SKC team that will not have Espinoza and Ilie in the starting 11, and that's Roger Espinoza, by the way, not Christian Espinoza, for those that is confusing between the 2 Espinoza in the league. But yeah, you know, all they need is to win this game, and that they will basically clinch the playoffs. Now, in case if they don't win this game, if they can get a draw and hope that the Quakes lose or tie, then they will also make it into the playoffs. SKC, of course, is eliminated from playoff implication, but there's no doubt that they definitely are coming into this game thinking that, yeah, you know what, forget about this game. This game doesn't really mean anything for us. We might as well think about our holiday plan. No, I doubt that Peter Vermees will have that kind of mindset toward this game, and he knows that despite his team is eliminated from the playoffs, he want nothing more than to spoil the opposition a chances to not make the playoffs, and they get a chance to do it against FC Dallas in this game, as if FC Dallas does lose this game, and depending on the result between Portland and San Jose, they could also be the odd man out of missing out on the playoffs. But in many ways, you would say that Dallas should win this game, and that since they are so good at home this season compared to their road form that has been just absolutely dreadful, you would think that they should be winning this game. And that I think if they do not win this game, if they drew or lose this game, you kind of say that they don't deserve in terms of making the playoffs. And it also kind of gives me another point of the fact that if they do make the playoffs, I don't know how long they're gonna last in there. Like, I really think that even if they make the playoffs, this is a one and done team, because they have to go on the road, and we know that they're not good on the road, and that they have lost, besides Houston, they have lost the most game on the road to any other Western Conference team so far this season. So in some way, you could say that, you know, even if Dallas does make the playoffs, you know that they're gonna not make it deep into the playoffs. And in some way, maybe if you're neutral, you're hoping that SKC does win, and that if you're Portland and San Jose, you are definitely hoping that SKC can help you and do you a favor by winning against Dallas. And maybe that could, you know, if Dallas does lose this game and that this game ends in a draw, I believe both the Quakes and Portland would be able to make the playoffs. So we'll see if that is going to be the case. But moving on into the next match is Colorado. So Colorado is the fourth team out of these other three teams that is part of that hunt for those last two spots in the playoff race. And I know it sounds crazy, the fact that the Rapids are still in playoff contention. And yes, they definitely need a couple of Hail Marys in terms of making the playoffs. But, you know, their playoff implication is that all they need is to clinch a playoff spot with a win against LAFC, and hope that Dallas and San Jose is able to lose their game. So not only they want to win against LAFC, but they're also rooting hard for Portland to able to beat the Quakes so that they can also get themselves into a playoff spot. Now, LAFC, despite the fact that they pretty much have everything clinched, I mean, they already clinched the top spot in the Western Conference and also clinched the Supporters' Shield, they certainly want to clinch one last thing that might seem very important for them, even though this is kind of just a little bit of a stat line and kind of a record that I'm not quite sure if people will remember if this team does not win Supporters' Shield, and that is they want to break the record for the most ever points in MLS history, and that they can do that with a win against Colorado, and that, you know, knowing how they have been in the last couple of games, I'm not so sure they can just get a win against the Rapids, and that they can of course break that mark. And this is the other thing that I'm interested to see, what will Bob Bradley think, and the fact that, you know, does he really cares about this record? Like, I have heard a lot of media says that, you know, oh, Bob Bradley, he's definitely going to care about this record because, you know, he wants to prove to the rest of MLS that he is the best, and that, you know, nobody can, of course, be content against his team that he's managing. But the other thing is, does he also know the fact that, you know, just because you might break the record for the most point in MLS history, what happened if you either break the most point in MLS history and that you go into the playoffs and you got eliminated in the first round, or at worst, if one of your star player is going to be out for the playoffs because you decided to put a full string starting 11 so that you can get the most point in MLS. I mean, I'm just saying, they don't need to do this. They can still consider as one of the best, if not the best team in MLS, if they can, of course, win Supporters' Shield, or not just what they already won Supporters' Shield, but win MLS Cup this season. You know, I just think that, you know, like I said, even if they do break the record for the most point in MLS history, if they get eliminated in the first round, then I don't think you can say that they're the best team in MLS history. I mean, they might be the best regular season team in MLS history, but at the end of the day, I think down the years, if there is one thing that we're going to remember throughout the year, we are always going to remember who won MLS Cup. Like, I guarantee you, in 20 years, if LAFC does not break this record, and if the Red Bull still holds that record for the most point in MLS history from last year, nobody's going to say, oh, remember that year when the Red Bulls got the most point in MLS history? What a great team they are. But the thing is, you also got to remember that, oh yeah, they didn't win MLS Cup that year. They got eliminated in the conference final, and it was Atlanta that actually got there. So, therefore, maybe they are considered one of the best team in MLS history. So, yeah, you know, for them, it's if they really care about the fact that they are the best team in MLS history, not only they need to break the most point in MLS history in the regular season, but they got to make sure that they, of course, win MLS Cup, which is why it's really hard to do when you know that in this game, you know, if they do win this game and get the most point in MLS history, and that one of their star-studded player went down, or the fact that they get eliminated early on, then they are not going to remember as the best team in MLS history. But, you know, the bottom line is, we shall see how this one will turn out, and that I know Colorado will definitely be a team that I think they won't just park the bus against LAFC, and that, well, they're a team that kind of is similar to Portland, where they are very good in terms of counter-attacking, and the fact that they are the kings of set pieces. Like, this team, if you give away a set piece to the Rapids, be ready to get score on, because this team, I swear, probably 1/3, if not half of the goals that they have scored this season has come from the set pieces. And they also have a guy named Jack Price that this season has got the most assists ever on a set piece in MLS history. So, yeah, you know, this is why I think out of all four of these teams that you think are chasing for those last two spots, and if you ask anybody out of all those four teams, which are the two teams that you want to see to make it to the playoffs? Obviously, one of them, people might say Portland or San Jose, but the other has to be the Rapids, because they have just been so hot for the past couple of weeks, and it's going to be a shame, the fact that if they do win this game, and that depending on what other resort goes, and that it goes against them, they still won't be making the playoffs, because they just came a little bit too short, and this hot streak just came a little bit too late. But if they can make the playoffs, then watch out. This team is going to be a very dangerous team, in that I really think this could be a dark horse team to make a very deep playoff run, with the way that they have just been red hot lately. But moving on, in terms of the next game, is Houston and the Galaxy. So this is the rematch of last year's Decision Day, and I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans, you know, I know you're going to about to hear me say about what happened last time when the Galaxy play Houston on Decision Day, but just for the sake that I don't want to once again beat the dead horse on what happened last year, I'm just going to jump into the point where, in terms of the playoff implication for the Galaxy, all they need is that if they can win this game against Houston, then I think they will clinch at least one game at home, and that they can still technically clinch the second spot in the Western Conference if they, of course, can win against Houston, and that they hope either Seattle or Minnesota is able to get a draw in those games. And keep in mind, in terms of the first tiebreaker, which is wins, the Galaxy technically has the most win out of those teams that is between first through fifth right now. So, you know, if they can, of course, win their game, or even maybe draw their game. Well, actually, they need to, of course, win their game and hope that Seattle and Minnesota gets a draw out of this game. All three teams, I believe, will be tied at 54 points, and that the Galaxy will have the tiebreaker because they have the most win. But, again, you know, despite the fact that the Dynamo is eliminated from the playoffs, and knowing the fact that in the last game when Vancouver got absolutely embarrassed at home by a Vancouver team that is dead last in the Western Conference and had nothing to play for, I'm not so sure that this is an absolute guarantee 3 points for the Galaxy. And especially the fact that Houston has started to kind of find their form at home again and start winning again at home. I am certainly not guaranteed the fact that they can, of course, can just easily walk into BBVA Compass Stadium and expect all 3 points in this game. And also keep in mind, if the Galaxy does lose their game and RSL is able to win their game against Vancouver, then they could find themselves in the 5th spot, and that they could be the odd man out in terms of not being able to host a playoff game in the playoffs. So, yeah, it's be interesting to see what can happen in this game and whether or not if the Galaxy can make amends of what happened last year on Decision Day and maybe get some redemption of winning this game so that they can at least guarantee a game at Dignity Sports Park in the playoffs. Which now brings us to the next game, which is Seattle versus Minnesota, and this could really be a game of the battle for second place, as Seattle currently is 15-8-10, and the same goes with Minnesota, and that both of these teams can clinch a home playoff spot with a draw, and that both of these teams are currently 2 points ahead of the Galaxy and 3 points ahead of RSL, and that no doubt whoever wins this game, I think, is going to get that second spot. Now, when you look at both of these teams, as I mentioned, the fact that both of these teams can clinch a home playoff spot with a draw, the question is, if you're one of these teams, if you're Brian Schmitzer or Adrian Heath, do you think about going for the win and trying to get that second spot? Because you know that technically you don't need to win this game to get a home playoff spot. Like, if you get an honors even draw, then both teams, of course, will get home playoff game. But if you win this game and you get into that second spot, and as I mentioned yesterday when I talked about the importance of the second spot, because, in case if the top team in each conference fall, they will be the next in line in hosting a conference final game, and that they at least guarantee themselves to have 2 home playoff game. And I know the home playoff game has been kind of a little bit of a cliche, and that I can obviously have a discussion of whether or not if that really means a lot to teams that is going to be heading into the playoffs. But it's going to be interesting to see if one of these teams are trying to be aggressive and trying to be a little bit greedy in terms of getting a win so that they can, of course, get that second spot. And keep in mind, if this game ends in a draw and the Galaxy is able to get a win against Houston, then neither of these teams is able to get that second spot, and that if this game ends in a draw or the Galaxy game between Houston ends in a draw and a loss, then Minnesota would have that second spot. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen in this game, and that, if both of these teams are satisfied the fact that they can at least have one home playoff game, then I'm pretty sure both manager is going to try to rest their guys heading into the first round of the playoffs. Or if one of these teams are thinking greedy and that they want to make sure that they get at least 2 home playoff games and get into that second spot, then I think both of these teams, or at least one of these teams, will put their starting 11 and hope to get that second spot. But now moving on into the final game of this week is RSL versus Vancouver. So the Whitecaps is currently 8-10-5, while RSL is currently 15-5-13. And the only thing left to play for RSL is certainly home field advantage, as they're 1 point behind the Galaxy and 3 points behind Minnesota and Seattle for that second spot. Although I'm pretty sure they're not going to get that second spot, because even if they, of course, win their game against Vancouver, and that if Seattle and Minnesota draw or one of these teams wins, then they are not, the math doesn't really equal them to potentially get that second spot. So basically the second spot is out of the equation, although I think they technically still could get that third spot, depending on if they, of course, can win this game against Vancouver and one of these teams would lose, because they will have the tiebreaker over one of these teams in terms of wins. And I would assume that this should be a win for RSL. I mean, yes, it's on the road against the Whitecaps, and the Whitecaps did have that big upset against the Galaxy at home, which they won, or on the road, which they won 4-3. But they haven't been very good this season, and that RSL, if they want to make sure that they can at least get a home playoff game, and I think getting a home playoff game is very important for them, considering the fact that they're not a good team in terms of going on the road. They need to, of course, win against the Whitecaps, and I think they should be able to beat the Whitecaps, who is one of those teams that I won't say that they're kind of like a spoiler team, because for most of the last couple of weeks, except for that Galaxy versus Vancouver game, where I really think that game was just a game where who exactly can score more goals with no defense whatsoever in that match. But besides that, I think they're just pretty much waiting for the season to end, and that they'll already start thinking about what they can do next season to kind of improve this team. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. As usual, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 6 of these games, and I'll also make sure to leave a link in the description below talking about the part 1 of the MLS Decision Day preview, which I did talk about the Eastern Conference game that you can, of course, go and watch. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.